Hello, everybody. Today we have Greg Powers, who is the Human Resources Director for Family Health Centers. And we'll start off with him introducing himself and telling us a bit about human resources in the nonprofit sector.
Welcome, everybody. As Andy said, my name is Greg Powers. I'm a Human Resources Director for Family Health Centers. And as most of you probably already know, Family Health Centers is a nonprofit organization. And we'll get into that in just a bit. My background stems from manufacturing all the way through to Homeland Security into nonprofit. Don't know how I ended up here, luck of the draw I guess, but getting into the nonprofit section, as Andy has requested, the big difference in human resources, if you look at human resources, transferable skills go from one industry to the next. It doesn't matter if it's manufacturing, Homeland Security, the casino where I worked for 8 years as the HR director. But the big difference in profit versus nonprofit is that as a nonprofit, we're not generating revenue to share with our profit holders. We are generating care for the industry within the area where we're working. Ours happens to be healthcare. In the healthcare industry, it's a little difficult as a nonprofit organization to compete with the wages that are out there that are prevalent with the private sector. And in doing so, and trying to do so, that makes it a little bit difficult for recruiting. Now, as I said, the discipline of human resources, every industry has its own problems, whether they're profit or nonprofit. In the profit business, the industry share, organizations and industry share difficulties in everything from hiring to retention. Ours is more on the providing care to the greater good of the community. In other words, we are mission driven. We are not profit driven. And as a mission driven organization, it is incumbent upon us to provide the care to our patients the best that we know how and the best that they can get. What we're trying to do is to make sure that all of our patients can be seen regardless of income, and that all patients receive the same courtesy and care as the next one. And in order to do that, we have to have caring people working for us. As I said, wages are a little lower on the not-for-profit side, making recruitment very difficult. The best thing that we can do in the way of recruitment is right now going through the civil service process that we do. Civil service will identify the positions. Civil service will post them on their website for us. That kind of limits us. We can't do pre-screening with these individuals. The civil service will take our basic requirements, our minimum requirements, and any preferreds that we have added on. They will then post the job. Out of the plethora, I'll say, of individuals applying for any one position that we have, they will qualify the top three. Those top three candidates are the only three that we get to see, unless all three of those candidates really do not meet the qualifications, which is sometimes very rare. However, getting them in here, having said that, retaining them is another issue. Some of our turnover is greater in areas where the pay naturally is lower, $8.16 an hour up. It's difficult to find individuals to come on board with that low pay. So how do we compensate for that? We compensate hopefully by having a culture of caring, not just for our patients, but for the employees themselves. Once an employee gets on board, they pass the 60-day probationary period that's required by the civil service. We hope to keep them forever. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Retention also poses a problem. We've had, in one of our areas, we've had quite a bit of turnover, and it's due to other jobs becoming available in the healthcare industry that's paying anywhere from $2 to $3 more an hour. Basically, what's happening with Family Health Centers is that we're being used as a training ground for several of our positions. That's very difficult to combat. We try to make up for it, as I said, by establishing a culture of care and by bringing on into that benefits that our employees can enjoy. Based on industry standards, Family Health Centers is paying about 36% benefits for the package that we offer an employee. Again, way beyond anything else that anybody's doing in the community right now, especially the nonprofits. There again is a difference of what we can offer and what we can afford. The for-profit organizations can offer things like health spas or workout rooms, basically everything from daycare right on up to elder care in some cases. With the monies that we get from federal grants, we are limited as to where those monies can be spent. They are designed, the monies that we get, to go directly into the grant itself. And that in itself can pose a problem. At times, the grants that we have are specific. All grants are specific, but they may have a time limit. That time limit may be 6 months. That time limit may be 12 months. So finding individuals qualified to perform those tasks for that limited time period is very difficult for us, especially when we have our own preset requirements of benefits. If an individual is coming on board for a period of 6 to 12 months, then we can offer them the same benefits as anybody else. If we're taking on a short-term, 30 to 90 days, it's difficult for us to provide benefits to an individual that's coming on short-term, full-time. So looking at the benefit section, looking at the recruitment and the retention, there are a lot of challenges that we have to face that will enable us to maintain the presence that we have and the care that we provide for our patients.
Greg, what's a typical week like for you as HR director?
As HR director, typical week runs anywhere from, and some of this may be self-imposed on me, but 40 to 45, 50 hours a week. It includes everything from employee relations. That may include sexual harassment complaints. It may include complaints on pay, complaints on benefits. It does also include new hire orientation process that we have. It includes dealing with every department. Doing a needs assessment within each department to determine what their needs are is the basic premises for the need for human resources. Once we've made that determination, on a weekly basis, we have to look at that, make changes as necessary, ad hoc meetings. Out of a typical 45, 50-hour week, I'd say 30 hours spent in meetings.
What do you see as some of the biggest challenges for managers within the nonprofit sector dealing with their employees?
One of the biggest problems I perceive, I think is the biggest problem, is the education side. During the educational process, the training that organizations and schools have to offer that's available, a lot of it has to do with organizational skills, organizational development. I think the biggest issue facing any organization is the organizational development and succession planning. If an individual going into human resources knows and understands succession planning and they can incorporate that into the culture, then part of their job is going to be done for them. Succession planning is critical because of the turnover that we have. We have people who are reaching retirement age. I'll give an example, as our executive director may be getting near retirement age, and when that happens, we should be able to pull from the resources that we have within family health centers to fill that position. So that right on down the line, that position that is left by the executive director is filled, the position that we used to fill that is left from the bottoms right on up, is the way we try, or we want to incorporate succession planning into the organization. If you're going into a nonprofit, I would suggest very seriously that you take into consideration all the training that you can get that specifies nonprofit partnerships. In nonprofit, you're dealing a lot more with community agencies, civic organizations. You have those partnerships that you build over a period of time, and it's not something that comes natural. Just because we're a nonprofit organization doesn't mean that someone is going to give us a break on the pricing. But if you go out to these organizations and you work with the communities and civic organizations and the groups, some grassroots organizations out there trying to get into the community, using their help to let everybody know who we are and what we do, I think your job's going to be a little easier, especially on the recruiting side. We've developed recently, I told you, the culture of caring. What I want to do is to extend that culture of caring to our recruiting side. Right now, Family Health Centers doesn't do a lot of independent recruiting, and I think that's one of our downfalls, if you will. In order for us to achieve our goal of recruiting and retaining those individuals who fit within the corporate culture that we've established, it's imperative that they know what that culture is when they're applying for the job. So what we're trying to do is work through civil service, having our own job fairs that we can pre-screen these individuals, giving them the good, the bad, the ugly, the Clint Eastwood good, bad, the ugly scenarios, and let them make an informed decision before they apply to civil service. If you as a nonprofit organization do not have the restrictions of going through another entity for your hiring, you're able to do that automatically. It's a given. There's no circumventing any other business entity or any regulations, just going straight into it. That's an advantage for you. As I said, working with civil service, it's been a wonderful advantage for us to have them, but we're now getting to the point that we want to make sure that the individuals that we're bringing on board, everything from our front office managers right on up to it, and if necessary that we have to hire for executive positions, that they know and understand who we are, what we do, why we do it, and how we do it.
Greg, what advice would you have for a manager dealing with a problem employee?
The first thing I would ask is that if the issue with the employee is with another employee, then you have a face-to-face with both employees at the same time. When dealing with just, I'll call them problem children, without getting into any specific reason, the difficult task sometimes is confrontation. I know a lot of managers avoid it if possible. Training. If you can get your training before you get into a position like that, get into conflict resolution, that's going to be a big advantage. The other thing is, there's got to be documentation. With us, again, going through civil service, every disciplinary action that we take up to and including termination has to be vetted through civil service. And it's something that as of late we've tried to instill into our supervisors, that documentation is imperative. If you have a minor discussion with an employee, document that discussion. Always make sure that the employee is aware that it's being documented and that they know and understand what the outcome of that discussion is going to be. They have expectations, and as long as an individual knows what they're expected to do and what's expected of you, then that documentation is a natural flow. Once you've reached a certain point with the individual, and we have progressive disciplinary actions that we take, most corporations do, then the documentation proves itself to go to that next level. Then when it comes to fighting false termination or harassment or any other avenue that the ex-employee at this point usually takes, it's not difficult to combat it in unemployment issues or EEOC issues. The documentation, like going into nonprofit itself, it's imperative that you know where you're getting yourself, what you're getting yourself into. The documentation keeps you from making mistakes. We've had several incidences where documentation was not there. We've had to go back and look over records from 3-4 years ago and trying to put together issues after a certain length of time. It's almost impossible. If the employee is presenting real issues that need immediate determination, you're probably going to hear from the supervisor a lot quicker than you would. If it's something that the supervisor is not able or capable of controlling, then probably looking at supervisory training. But for the biggest issues, I think the documentation will resolve, in most cases, the issues.
Thanks, Greg. Anything else you want to add?
Good luck, and if you need some help or anything I can do, I'll give Andy my contact information and love to hear from you.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Greg.
Sure.